You wake up one morning and every number is gone. Not just the balance in your bank account, the account itself, the salary, the rent, the price of bread, the entire invisible architecture of digits that decides whether you eat, where you sleep, whether you can see a doctor, all of it gone. No coins, no cards, no debt, no dollar sign anywhere on Earth. And yet somehow, for at least 300,000 years before the first metal coin was struck, human beings woke up every morning and figured it out. So how did ancient humans actually live before money existed? And what did they use instead? The short answer most people reach for is barter. You have fish, someone else has wheat, you swap. Simple, elegant, primitive. It's also almost certainly wrong. Everyone assumes barter was the foundation of pre-money economies. The truth is that anthropologists studying hundreds of forager and early agrarian societies have found almost no evidence of it operating as a routine economic system between strangers. The real engine was something older, stranger, and far more psychologically demanding. It was debt. Not the transactional, interest-accruing kind, but a web of social obligations so dense and so carefully tracked in human memory that it amounted to the first economy anyone had ever built. In 2011, anthropologist David Graeber at the London School of Economics published a survey of existing ethnographic literature covering societies across 5 continents. His analysis found that in communities studied before and after European contact, groups in the Pacific Islands, Sub-Saharan Africa, indigenous North America, and Melanesia, the dominant organizing principle was not, I give you this, you give me that. It was, I give you this, and now you owe me something, and the whole community is watching. That web of mutual obligation, Graeber argued, predates coinage by at least 30,000 years. The number matters. Money is roughly 5,000 years old. Obligation is 6 times older. Here's where it gets strange. If ancient economies ran on obligation rather than exchange, someone had to keep score. And there were no spreadsheets, no ledgers, no receipts. The score was kept inside human relationships, and it was brutal to cheat. In 1966, anthropologist Marshall Sahlins published what became one of the most cited papers in economic anthropology, based on his fieldwork with forager groups across Australia and Central Africa. His central finding overturned almost everything Western economists had assumed about early human life. Sahlins found that hunter-gatherer groups in the Gobi region of the Kalahari, the Kung San people, worked an average of just 15 to 20 hours per week to meet all of their subsistence needs, not per day. Per week. The remaining time was spent in rest, conversation, ritual, and what Sahlins called sleeping a great deal. He called foragers the original affluent society, not because they had abundance, but because their needs were modest and their social system distributed everything that existed. Nobody stockpiled, nobody hoarded. The moment one person in the group accumulated more than they could use, social pressure, gentle at first, then sharp, redistributed it. Wealth in that world was not what you owned. It was what people said about you when you weren't in the room. But what about the things that couldn't be distributed by reputation? Food in winter, territory, tools, access to water. Here's where the picture gets even more counterintuitive. Archaeologists studying early human campsites in the Levant, the region spanning modern Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria, have found evidence of systematic food sharing dating back at least 80,000 years. In 2019, researchers analyzing animal bone assemblages at the Kesem Cave site near Tel Aviv found cut mark patterns indicating that large game, aurochs, red deer, fallow deer, were butchered cooperatively and divided across multiple family units at the site, not consumed by the hunters who made the kill. The site spans a continuous occupation period of roughly 400,000 to 200,000 years ago. Large-scale cooperative butchery and distribution left physical marks in bone that survive. What those marks say is this: the person who made the kill had no special right to the meat. That single fact restructures the entire premise of what ownership meant before money. So what happened when 2 groups, strangers who shared no obligations, no common ancestors, no overlapping debts, needed to trade? The system they used was so unlike modern commerce that economists spent decades refusing to call it trade at all. Anthropologists call it silent trade or dumb barter, and it appeared on at least 4 separate continents: West Africa, Southeast Asia, the Arabian Peninsula, and among First Nations groups in the Pacific Northwest, apparently independently. The mechanics were always nearly identical. One group would leave goods at a fixed location, withdraw entirely, and return later to find either the goods untouched, meaning the other side rejected the deal, or a different pile of goods left in exchange, meaning it was accepted. No face-to-face contact, no negotiation, no language required. Herodotus, writing around 450 BCE, described Carthaginian merchants using this exact system with West African tribes across the Sahara. He called it so routine that it required no comment, but what it reveals is not primitivism. It reveals a sophisticated solution to a genuinely hard problem. How do you trade with someone you don't trust when you have no shared legal system to enforce a contract? The answer ancient humans built was to remove the humans from the transaction entirely and let the goods do the talking. And yet, even that framing, trade, goods, transaction, maybe importing modern assumptions onto something that worked by completely different logic. In 2001, economist Samuel Bowles at the Santa Fe Institute published a comparative study of resource distribution across 24 small-scale societies, pulling from ethnographic records across 6 decades of fieldwork. His finding: in 23 of those 24 societies, the primary mechanism for distributing food, tools, and materials was not exchange at all. It was what he called generalized reciprocity, giving without expectation of a specific return, in the confidence that the social fabric would eventually repay the debt in a form that couldn't be specified in advance. Not, I give you meat, you give me hides. More like, I give you meat because you are part of what keeps me alive, and the giving itself is what keeps the system alive. The 24th society, the outlier, showed evidence of market-like exchange. Bowles noted that it was also the society with the highest incidence of conflict over resources of any group in the study. None of this means pre-money life was peaceful, equal, or free from hierarchy. It wasn't. Archaeological evidence from burial sites across Eurasia, including the 30,000-year-old Sungir burial site in Vladimir, Russia, where a single adult male was interred with more than 3,000 ivory beads sewn into his clothing, makes clear that some form of status marking, and probably differential access to resources, existed even in deep prehistory. But status, in that world, was earned through redistribution. The chief who threw the biggest feast lost the most food. The hunter who made the largest kill gave it away. Power wasn't accumulated by keeping, it was built by giving and kept by giving again. The potlatch ceremonies of the Kwakwaka'wakw people of the Pacific Northwest, documented in detail by anthropologist Franz Boas starting in the 1880s, worked on exactly this logic. A leader's status was not measured by wealth held. It was measured by the scale of what was destroyed or given away at the ceremony. The greater the gift, the greater the giver. The richer you appeared to the outside world, the more you were expected to give, until you appeared poor. And in that apparent poverty, the community saw the proof of your power. Money, when it finally arrived, quietly reversed that entire equation. Think back to that morning with the numbers gone. No account. No balance. No salary. What ancient humans had instead was not a simpler version of what we have. It was a different machine entirely. One built not on scarcity and storage, but on relationship and obligation. One where your survival depended not on what you could protect, but on how many people would feel the loss if you disappeared. The question worth sitting with isn't whether that world was better. It's whether the thing money replaced, that dense, exhausting, beautiful web of mutual debt, was a burden we escaped or a structure we were built to hold. We didn't stop owing each other, we just found a way to pretend that we could.